Hi, and welcome to the Massland Property Options Seminar. My name is Daniel Kircher. Many of you already know me as a specialist in stock market options. Over the past 10 years, I've been involved in teaching tens of thousands of people all around the world how to build their wealth with stock market options. I've also been involved in property and business. However, today we're not here to talk about stock market options, we're talking about property options. About a year ago, I had the great privilege of meeting a gentleman named Mark Rolton, and I found Mark to be an incredibly intelligent person, but more importantly, he was very approachable, very down-to-earth, and very, very genuine. And what he's involved in is absolutely incredible, and I was so impressed by it that I wanted to share it with you in this program. In a very short period of time, Mark has become one of Australia's leading specialists in property options. In just over 7 years, he's built up a portfolio of property options worth in excess of $500 million. And he now spends his time teaching other people how to partner with him looking for property deals. So even if you've never invested in property before or have very little money to invest, you're in for a very exciting program, because you're going to discover that you don't need to have a lot of knowledge or money to become very successful with property options. In fact, most people believe that to be successful with property, you need to have a lot of money. They also believe that you have to have a lot of knowledge, that you know what you're doing in the marketplace. They also believe that you need to have a lot of time to look for deals. They also think that you have to live near a high growth region and that you need a lot of luck. Well, the reality is none of those are in fact true. You don't need to have a lot of money or knowledge or even luck, or it doesn't even matter where you live. What Mark's going to share with us today is an understanding of how anyone who's dedicated and committed to becoming successful in property options can build quite a substantial amount of return for themselves. In fact, he's going to teach us how we can become involved in the high return, low risk world of property options. Now, to be successful with property options, what you do require is you need time. You need to spend time learning about property options and then spend time looking for property deals. What you also need is you need a commitment to succeed. You need to make the commitment to yourself and to Mark that you're going to look for deals and then partner with him in seeing those deals through. What you don't need is you don't need a lot of money. In fact, you don't need any money at all. As you'll learn in this program, that Mark's company, Massland, provides all the capital, all the money required for the property option deals. You also don't need to have a lot of knowledge. Mark's team and himself are going to teach you what you need to know about property options to become successful and how to identify the best deals possible. You also don't need to have a lot of luck. In fact, Mark likes to say that he makes his own luck. However, a bit of luck never hurts at all. So if you're serious about becoming a wealth creation entrepreneur and you want to learn the high return, low risk environment of property options, then I believe that you must understand what Mark's involved with. It's our great privilege and pleasure to have Mark with us today to share with us how he's built his fortune with property options. Welcome to the program, Mark.
Thanks, Daniel. It's great to be here.
So, Mark, can you give us an overview of what it is you actually do?
Sure, Daniel. First and foremost, we look at strong population growth. On a national level, we look at where the activity is. We look at the new building approvals that are being granted by councils. That tells us a lot of things about the residential market, firstly. Secondly, we also look at government spending. That's of key significance to us because where the federal government is willing to spend money are areas of key interest to us. Thirdly, we also look for lots of development, other developments, shopping centres, schools, hospitals, primarily other types of infrastructure, but also the private sector. And lastly, we also look at councils. Are they progressive, firstly, but are they proactive? Typically, we'll find ourselves interviewing councils, talking to, anywhere from like the mayor or anyone like that, or even down to the planning officers. And that'll tell us a lot too, because if a council is financial, they're typically proactive in development. If they're not so financial, you'll see that they're anti-development. So that's where we begin. That's what we start to look at first. And then we find ourselves looking at online mapping systems. So whether it be satellite imaging or just the relevant maps that apply to us. We'll then be looking at whether it be broadacre, an existing building, raw land, etc. From here, we'll find that it's very important to consider what the town plan says. You know, what is the current zoning? And then we'll find ourselves targeting industrial, whether that be mixed use or high density residential. So now that we've found a property, we're now looking to make sure that it's in a high growth area, that it's around other developments, and more importantly, that it's zoned industrial, commercial, or high density residential. With this in mind, then we'll value the property based on recent sales. Through these databases, we can determine what a comparable value is in that region. Armed with that information, we can also use the same database to find the details of the owner. So we get on the telephone, we approach the owner, and we determine whether they are open to the idea of an option or settling on the property in 2 years from now.
So what do you typically do with the option once you've gained it?
Well, the strategy is to, now that you've got time, is to gain a development approval. I'll engage my team of engineers, surveyors, environmental consultants, town planners, and we'll in essence go about getting a development approval for the site. That'll take anywhere between, say, 4 to 15 months to effectively get an approval in place for that particular site.
Okay, so once the DA comes through, the development approval comes through from council, what happens to the value of the land?
Well, it increases dramatically. You know, if we're using an example like a broad acre parcel of land, instead of it being one title, we now have an approval to cut that or subdivide that parcel of land into 50 different blocks. That enhances the value of the land dramatically. With that, you and I can either go ahead and develop the particular site, or we can sell our position in the option. I.e., if it's a 24-month period, we can actually sell our position in the transaction. So we're not paying for it. It's not our intention to settle here, but the ultimate buyer can now control the deal and pay for it when the allotted time comes around.
Okay, so let me recap on what you've just explained to us.
Yep.
You essentially look for property deals
Yep.
using online internet tools, be it online Google or RP data or databases. You then zoom in and find high growth regions where the government is spending a lot of money.
Correct.
And there's lots of development in the region.
Yep.
You then focus in on broad acre or raw land type parcels, or even some built up housing
Yep.
areas.
Yep.
You then contact the owners of those properties, whose details you find from the online systems.
Correct.
And you ask them, would they be interested in entering into a deal with you
Yep.
to option the property
Yep.
for you to purchase their property up to 2 years from now,
Correct.
or potentially even longer.
Yep.
And in return, you're going to pay them a price higher than what they would sell the property for today.
Yeah, exactly. You know, very good concept. You're absolutely right. You know, the advantage that they have of granting us an option is that we can pay over and above the market price. So you're absolutely right. In some cases, as much as 10%.
Right, so they're going to get a better deal by optioning the property with you now,
Most definitely.
and you then have the time to actually take to then go and get a development approval through council.
Yep.
And you have a team of town planners, engineers, architects, etc., who are an outsourced team to you. They're not on your staff, but you engage them to then go and put the development approval together and get it through council.
Absolutely right.
Right, and once it's through council, it now has a lot of value. The value of that raw land now increases dramatically.
Yes.
Because instead of having just one big 50-acre parcel, you now have potentially 25 or 50 cut up sections for industrial use or commercial use or high density residential,
Correct.
which now becomes very attractive to major developers.
Yep.
People who come along now and purchase the option from you, and you call them the ultimate buyers.
Correct.
They're the ones who actually buy the option from you and then go and actually develop the property. Is that right?
Absolutely. It's exactly the system. I mean, we don't necessarily want to be the developer, but there are a lot of people that actually want to do that specifically as their core business. And that's a very fruitful enterprise. But we're not actually talking about settling on the land here or paying for it. We're adding value to it in that given period of time, and then we're going to sell that opportunity to someone else.
Right, so you don't actually settle on the land and own the land at any time.
No.
You're just simply optioning it from the landowner.
That's right.
Getting the development approval through council, and then on selling the option to a development company that actually builds the site and builds the development.
The finished product, if you like.
Brilliant. Okay, Mark, so can you give us an idea of how much upside, how much profit there typically is in one of your deals, and how much a development approval would actually cost you?
Sure, a basic deal for us would be, say, about $1 million. We'd option something for $1 million. Now that we've got the development approval, we've undertaken that process, it's going to be worth, let's say, about 1.7 million, for an example. We used before the concept of 50 blocks of land. That's a great one. Out of that, yes, we're going to have some costs for the DA. For the exercise, let's say that they're around about 10%. That would be $70,000. So $700,000 less the $70,000 worth of expenses leaves us with a net profit of $630,000.
That's amazing. And over what time period would you actually get all that approved?
Good question. That's sort of a little hard to answer, but generally somewhere between 4 to 15 months on average would see that completion.
And do you always get the DA approved, or do you sometimes sell the option on to the ultimate buyer without even getting a DA?
Most certainly. That happens a lot. We call that a short option. In fact, we will sell the option without development approval in place.
So you option the property from the owner,
Correct.
and then without even doing a development approval,
Yep.
you on-sell the option to an ultimate buyer
Yep.
for more money than you've optioned the property for from the original owner of the land. Is that right?
Absolutely. That's exactly how it works.
And you call that a short option,
That's right.
as opposed to a long option?
Exactly. A short, just to recap there, a short is essentially that. We've identified something of significant value, and now we've optioned it and we've sold it to the market with the balance of the 24 months in place.
Right.
A long option is a little different, where we are undertaking a full development approval on our own steam. So we're going to pay for it ourselves and then sell the site or the property with a development approval in place to the market. So it has a DA in place, ready to build.
So I'm assuming then that the value of the property deal to you, you can make more upside by getting the development approval through council.
Yep.
That makes the property more valuable, and then you sell the option to the ultimate buyer.
Correct.
But it would take you more time,
Yep.
and you actually have to fund the development
Yes.
approval yourself
Yes.
to get it through council. So you have a short or a long option.
Correct.
Short being you're basically just optioning it and selling it on to somebody
Yep.
else.
Yep.
And a long option, you are optioning it, doing the development approval,
Correct.
and then selling the option with the development approval to an ultimate buyer.
Absolutely. And yes, the margins are, substantially greater in the long option scenario by far, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Now, Mark, creating short options was how you actually got started originally with property options, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
So maybe you can take a moment and just share with us how you actually got started. What's your story?
Well, it's quite a detailed one. It's quite funny, actually. I came from a building background. I was never going to be an academic at school. And my parents allowed me to leave school provided I had an apprenticeship. So I became an apprentice builder at the age of 16. I left school, became a builder. I went on to study project management at night school and started doing a lot of high-rise, heavy commercial construction. I decided to go back to university, and that way I thought I would actually add another skill to my bow and sell that to the marketplace. And in doing that, I had a very strange phone call I actually came across one day from my secretary at the time. Her name was Maureen. She's a dear soul, and she rang me and she said, "You know what? Listen, Mark, you're sitting down. I've got some really bad news." And it really sort of rocked my world, because I'd worked up to that point about 85, 90 hours a week for about 4 years. And she basically wanted to tell me that the manager that I'd appointed to my company to run it while I was at uni studying had embezzled about $230,000 in cash.
Wow.
Now, not only had this chap stolen money that wasn't his in a very clever fashion that wasn't so detectable, he had also left me with a $200,000 tax bill with the ATO.
Gosh.
And, at 23 years old, I would have been, just turned 23 at that point, I had a $430,000 debt hanging over my head, and I didn't know how to fix the problem. And I can tell you, this is almost 10 years ago now, Daniel. So, back then, $430,000 cash could have bought you 4 houses where I lived. So it was a significant debt. Outright bought. So it was a very, very rough start. From that point forward, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to turn. And I found myself cleaning windows 50 hours a week, earning $400 for the exercise. And it was a very scary time. I'd gone from a high life, living in a penthouse, doing very well, the cars, the boats, and all the trimmings, to living in a 50 square metre unit and not even having a clue how I was going to repay almost $500,000. So it was a very turbulent time for me. And one day I was cleaning windows and my telephone rang, and it was a guy that I'd known very, very well over the years. He was a very successful land developer in southeast Queensland, in Australia here. And he had said to me, listen, I'm in a lot of trouble. Things aren't good, and I've got the banks all over me. Mark, they're breathing down my neck. In fact, so much so that the creditors roll in tomorrow. He said, my kids are being pulled out of private school tomorrow morning.
Wow.
He said, it's serious, and they've given me an ultimatum. And he said, listen, they've offered for me to sell out the balance of one of my land estates, and then we'll renegotiate the terms in order to get myself out of this hot water. So with that in mind, he sort of went on to explain to me, listen, I've got these 6 blocks of land, Mark. They're adjacent to a shopping centre. They're a great deal. They're ready to build on. They're flat. And they're worth about $150,000 a block. And I was like, listen, Brian, I don't really know if I can help you, but I'll take in the details anyway. That's
Sure.
exactly how it went. And he said, listen, they owe me about 136 or 137,000. I'll take what they owe me, what they owe me at the moment, And I said, that's fine. So I just said, listen, I can't help you. So I basically hung up the telephone. And the very next morning, I'm cleaning windows, doing my thing again. And another friend of mine had rang, Stewie, and he said, listen, Mark, you're not going to believe it. He said, my business is exploding. And things are going wild, they're going crazy, got this phenomenal growth going on. And Stewie was actually a financial advisor. And he was really good at creating financial products. And one of those was house and land packages back then. And he would literally grab land and houses, bundle them up, and use them as a financial product for his clients. And he said to me, listen, I need some land before the weekend. And 20